interested in the products that they supply, you can find them online at canadacurlingstone.on.ca. And then the last thing I'll say before we turn it over to Kim is sometime later tonight, you will be receiving a feedback survey in your email. So we would appreciate you filling out that survey. The email is going to be coming from Peter Delapella. So if you see an email from a strange Peter guy that you've never met before, don't just ignore that email. That's from us. So we appreciate you filling out that survey. Feedback is the only way that we improve. So we appreciate your feedback on that. So with that being said, Kim, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. So first up, I just wanted to thank the GNCC for inviting me to talk to you all about curling stones. I apologize for the echoey audio. I had my headphones all set up and for some reason they weren't working. So we've got a little bit of distance between me and the computer. So we'll go through some of the things that you need to know in terms of maintenance for your curling stones, things like that. If you do have specific questions in relation to your situation or to your stones particularly, as the guy said, if you want to just ask in the chat room or raise your hand, they'll bring the question to my attention. I'm hoping to get through all of what I've got, and hopefully we can have a question and answer session at the end of it. So with that, we will, I guess, get started with the slides that I have prepared for you guys.
Okay, everybody should be able to just see the slides right now. Is that correct?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect, perfect. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So first off, for those of you that don't know, Canada Curling Stone Company, we are a manufacturer of curling stones and ice equipment. So I just wanted to give you a quick little view of the company and kind of what we got going on here. So if you can the next slide forward. So that's our building. We're located just outside of London. We have 9 full-time employees that are work on site with us. We have a product line of ice equipment that is all made in-house. Pretty much 98% of what we do is made in-house. Such things as the nipper and the flex beam are things that were developed by our company, specifically with ice technicians in mind. We also have full blade sharpening service that does full 5-foot blades, flex beams, nipper blades, hand scraper blades, things like that. And also the Curlex handles and the light rock junior stones all fall under our brands, under the umbrellas that we do. And along with manufacturing of new stones, we also do repairs for gloves for the existing stones. Dan, do you want me to say slide or?
Yeah, whatever, however, next. Whatever.
Perfect. So the first part of the thing we want to go over is obviously, if you don't really know what type of curling stones you have at your facility, it's pretty hard to kind of decide on how to repair them or where to go moving forward from that. So knowing the type of granite that your stones are made from will have a big impact on the things that you can do and the plans that you can make for your stones. So slide down. So the different types of granite stones, there's been 5 different types of granites that stones have been made of over the years. Curling stone manufacturing started in the late 19th century. And I'm just going to go through briefly a little bit on the different types of granites. This information can also be found on our website. So if you need to take your computer to the club, if you're not sure what type of granite stones you have, you can take your computer and pull the slides up and you'll be able to see. If not, send me a picture and I can take a look at them and let you know what type of granite that you have. So the first one is one that's not as commonly known. It's the Key granite. Usually it's pinkish to brown in color. As you can see on the slide, it has pretty large grains of granite that are throughout the stone. It's a very soft and porous granite, which makes it a poor granite for curling stone strike bands because of the fact that it develops a lot of flat spots. What happens with this granite is when the stones come into contact with each other, the granite in behind the strike bands will actually crush and develop a lot of flat spots on the strike bands. So it's a granite that was used in the early manufacturing of stones, but has since been stopped, and it's very rare to find them in curling club situations, but we do still see them in some arena facilities and some startup clubs. The next one is the Elsie Craig common green granite. So it's a green colored granite. It has large black flecks scattered throughout the stone, and in some of the core qualities, you can actually see some white dissolvable material that surrounds those black flecks. Common green is a granite that is susceptible to pitting in the running surface, so most clubs will have inserts in those. And being of the Craig family, the straight bands will tend to chip in a half moon shape looking chip, so you'd be able to tell that that's exactly what those type of stones are. It's very not uncommon to see some of the older granites around. This granite has also been used for manufacturing of new stones, so it's one of the new stones that you can get, the type of granite you can get for new stones. Okay, Dan. The next one is the blue home granite. This is one of the stones that you'll hear a lot of talk about. It's in gray in color, and you can find some that have red to greenish type shades throughout the granite. It's a fine grained granite. It's optimal for the running surface because of the fact that it's a fine grained and dense granite. However, it does make it a poor quality granite for the strike bands, and you do still, again, because of the type characteristics in it, you do find that half moon shape chipping in this blue home stone as well, so it's also very susceptible to chipping. The next one down below is the blue Trevor granite. This granite comes from North Wales, and it is part of the Trevor family. It can be found in a blue color to a dark blue to a gray color. It is susceptible to pitting in the running surface and is excellent material for strike band. It's a very compact granite, so it allows to take a lot of pitting. The next one is the red Trevor granite, which is the Trevor granite family. It's found on a little bit different bench on the mountain in North Wales. It can run from a brownish color to a very pink color. Most of the new red Trevor stones that we manufacture now are very pink in color. They are less susceptible to pitting than the blue Trevor stones, so they make a good choice for clubs that are looking for new stones without inserts. And they're also excellent material for the strike band due to that compact makeup of that granite. So that'll give you kind of an overview of what type of stones you have. If you're not sure, or if you want to send stone pictures to me down the road, I can take a look at them and figure out what you can do with them. So once you've got an idea of that type of granite and what you want to do from them, then you have to look at what it is you need to do and how to fix them moving forward. So each type of granite, as I mentioned, has some natural characteristics to it. So knowing that from the other ones will give you an idea of what you can do and how to repair them moving forward. One of the things when I'm speaking with curling clubs or when we get into discussions about curling stuff is regardless of when and how old your stones are, every curling club should have a plan in place and some sort of a budget worked out to what they want to do with their stones and how to fix them moving forward. The ice techs and your rock committee on your boards should all have a rock journal or a rock journal at the club, which is different from what curlers keep for their rock journals. This is something that you'll look at, that you'll track the condition of the stones every year. Is there any chips in the strike bands that weren't there before? Is there any stones that are causing problems that weren't causing problems before? Is there a stone that's consistently causing a problem? When was the last time you had work done to your stones? When was the last time you textured your stones? And when you did texture them, what grit of paper did you use? Basically, this allows you to keep a track record of those stones and allows you to also figure out, what works moving forward. If you have problems, it allows you to give me some more information on what you've been doing with the stones so that I can give you some recommendations on how to go about and fix them. And then once you've done some research and figured out, what it is you'd like to do to the rocks moving forward to keep them working, then you can make your decision based on all those factors and how old the stones are, things like that moving forward. Okay, so my favorite question to ask in my presentation, and I don't have to hear any answers, but you can answer to yourself, is what is the most important part of a curling stone? So Dan, if you want to slide that forward. So I always get a lot of answers, when I slide this slide up on my presentations. And most people usually think the running surface is the most important part of the curling stone. But I am going to tell you, Dan, if you'd like to slide forward, that the strike bands are actually the most important part of your stone. Now, the reason being, is the strike bands actually dictate the life of your stone. So while you have maybe some running surfaces that are causing you problems, or you might have some issues with those running surfaces can always be fixed regardless of what you do to them. But the strike band of your stone will actually dictate how much life and how much play you're going to have left on your stones. So that's the area that most clubs neglect, and is the area that a lot of decisions are actually made on. So one of the things when we were talking about keeping the rock journal, one of those things that you're going to do is throughout at the start of the season or the off season is go through the stones, check for any chips, and mark them down, and then keep an eye on those chips or any of those marks or anything that's causing you any issues or concern in that area moving throughout the season, so you can check to make sure that they haven't gotten worse. There are some repairs that we can do for little chips and strike bands, and if you remind me to bring that up when we get back to that point, I'll kind of go over that with you. But if they're really big chips, then we do have some things we can fix. Some things they're too big, and then we end up having to replace them. So the strike bands play a pretty big part of what we can do for stones moving forward.
Kim, there was a question in the chat.
Sure.
Greg from Finger Lakes is asking, are there any templates, spreadsheets, or PDFs or whatever of good rock journals for sharing?
Not that I know of. I don't have one done up. Basically, in your rock template, I would say what you want to show is if you had any work done on them, you want to know the date of what the work was done, what type of granite your stones are. You want to keep a list of the handles and the serial numbers on the stones so you know what rocks are on what sheets. You might want to have a column of when you textured them last, what type of paper you use. Basically, it's just kind of a spot, like a journal even, that you can keep track. Some of the stones that we do for events, we'll actually send out a binder. All of the prints of the stones will be in that binder going to the event, so they know what the rocks were when they first came out of the factory, and then they can add their notes kind of as they go. I think I've had some clubs send me some pretty good kind of Excel sheets that they've made up, but there isn't really something specific out there. Kind of each their own, but if I ever develop one, I'll make sure to post it so everybody can kind of go over it. But basically, it's just information that is important to your stones. Just an Excel sheet will do. Okay, so just moving forward. So Dan, if you want to slide to the next one here. Okay, so the strike bands, as I mentioned, is the most important part of the stone, and what you do to your stones moving forward will revolve all around that. So if you've come to the decision, whether you're going to do your strike bands or not, one of the things that's important is to take a look at the shape of your stone, how flat the strike bands are currently. If the strike bands are quite flat, we still can rework them back, and as you can see in the one photo on the slide, we actually work the whole side of the stone. We center the stone in the machine and then work the sides back, trying to feather it back, trying to take out the least amount of material that we can take off to fix that side of the stone. So the thing to keep in mind with strike bands is if we let the strike bands get too flat, then we have to take out too much material to get them back to that shape, which then affects the weight of the stone. And we don't want to affect the weight of the stone, not as much for the performance of the stone, but for the life of the stone. The more weight that's on the stone, the more times that the club can have those stones reworked, which means it's a better investment for the club and keeps that club using those stones longer and not having to make that big purchase of new stones yet. And one of the things I wanted to bring up about the strike band reprofiling is while it will and also improve the action of the rocks in the house, flatter strike bands we all know has more drag effect. It doesn't get to the point where you see on TV. I've had a lot of comments made to me that, if I reprofile the strike bands, will they be as lively as the rocks that I see on TV? And the answer to that is no. It will improve what you already have going on at the club, but the rocks that you see on TV in the last 5 to 6 years have all been basically brand new stones. So one of the things is we've got fresh granite, 42-pound stones playing on 25, 26-second ice. So it's making much livelier, and people throwing 5-second peels down the sheet. So there's much more action that happens on TV, but it will improve what you've got going on at the club now. But the main reason for doing strike band reprofiling is basically to improve the life and extend the life of those stones. So just wanted to give you, so on the far slide on the right, as you look at it on the screen, just gives you an idea of what the strike bands kind of look like. These are a set of club stones that we actually worked the strike bands back for them. So you can get an idea. It's not a huge change, but you can really see the difference in the shape of the stone, and that flat area has now been worked back. We try to get the stones, on new stones, there's less than a 1/2 inch contact area on those strike bands. But in club stones, again, because I'm trying to make sure that I leave as much material on those stones as I possibly can, we work them back to as small as we can. But it also depends on the different shapes. And we do get clubs with different stone sizes in comparison to other clubs. So everything we do straight band related is always done based off the center of the set of the stones that we're working on. So it's not just a standard shape. This is all done based off of your stones that we come in from the club. So hopefully that makes kind of sense. So the next slide, Dan, actually just shows a combination, or sorry, a comparison between some of the other companies out there that do work on straight bands. So you can see the difference in the shapes. And this all goes back to, you know, do your homework, understand the different clubs, get references, really know what it is that you're getting into, so that you can have an understanding of what the stones will perform like when they get back to your club. So any questions on strict bands? Maybe might be a good time to see if anybody's got anything on that. If I don't see it here, then we'll move on. It's pretty straightforward. Straight bands are pretty straightforward. Okay, so moving forward, so we've got your straight bands looked after, and now we're thinking about the running surface of the stones. And as I mentioned to you earlier, you can take your stones and you can drag them behind your car in your parking lot and send them to me, and I promise you I can fix them. So it doesn't matter what the granite is or what the condition of the stones are, we can always fix the running surfaces. And there's a couple of different options when it comes to running surface repairs. And again, a lot goes back to knowing the type of granite that your stones are made from and what those stones do moving forward, so that you can make the best decision of what is the best way for the club to purchase or to repair their stones, using, getting the best value for their dollar. So running surface repairs is a couple of things. The first one I've got shown here is just basically a reconditioning job. And basically what this is we've taken the existing stone and we cut down into a fresh layer of granite, and we go into the middle of the stone, the bottom of the cup, and out to the outside. And what that does is basically gives you fresh granite, fresh updated dimensions on the cup and the running surface, so that every stone that's in your set now will all have the exact same dimensions going forward. If you have stones that are inconsistent in play, in other words, they do different things, this is a way that you're going to repair that. Okay, we will talk about texturing a little bit later, but texturing doesn't fix inconsistent performing stones. So the only way to fix stones, to get them all doing the same thing, is to have them come in and be reconditioned. If you have an insert set of stones, then your insert stones would come in and we would recondition the insert side, and away you go. If you have Trevor stones and you don't have inserts in them, for example, then you have the option of reconditioning maybe one side or both sides. The one thing to keep in mind is reconditioning on a straight set of Trevor stones or a straight set of common green stones is a short-term type repair. So you're looking at about 7 years that you'll have consistent performance in the stones. And that's not to say that after 7 years we're all just going to start doing different things again, but you'll start to see some of the characteristics of the granite start to play back in. So you might see 1 or 2 starting to do different things. So it's more of a short-term repair for that. On a blue hone insert stone, again, because of the type of granite that we're working with, it will extend the life of the stone and that running surface for probably close to 10 years. So you get a little bit longer out of reconditioning a blue hone insert stone than you do either a straight Trevor or a straight common green stone.
Kim, we have a question in the chat. Kevin from Plainfield Curling Club is asking, how does rebanding change the weight of the stone?
So reprofiling or reconditioning. So
You
by
wrote rebanding, so I assume that means reprofiling.
Okay, so with reprofiling, we just take a very fine layer off. So in a straight band, if we were to work on a club straight band only and they were poor condition, we would probably remove up to a pound of weight off that stone. But when we're working with the running surfaces and in the reconditioning situation, we remove probably, I'm going to say, like 0.15 of a pound. Like it's a very small amount. We just want to get down to fresh granite. So we just set the machine so that it just touches the top of the running surface and then away it goes in it'll cut. The only time we run into where reprofiling will make an issue is when we work on stones that have a very shallow cup. And then what ends up happening is because our cup profile is a little bit deeper, we will cut into those stones a little bit deeper in the cup area. And so that might, go up to adding another 0.10 of a pound loss, but it's very minimal with reconditioning.
We have another question from Dave Cutler. Are there any measurements a club can use on their strike bands for flatness and get some idea how much material may need to come off to reprofile?
So for strike bands, basically the easiest thing to do is to take two stones when you have your ice in or even on a flat level surface and put them side by side and see how much of the strike band is touching. If you see that the strike band touches all the way up from where it's kind of shows on the stone to the top, then you'll definitely know that those are stones that need to be reprofiled. If you can take a stone and stand it on its side and it doesn't fall over, that's another good indication that the strike bands are starting to get flat. With Trevor stones, what happens is the strike bands will wear flat. They won't chip, but they'll wear flat and they'll get wider, and then you'll start to feel a sharp edge on the top and bottom of that strike band. And at that point in time, those sharp edges are what causes the chipping. So when you get to that point, that's another indicator that those strike bands need to be done. It's hard to give a measurement because a lot of the time, when you see new stones, for example, what's actually touching each other is very small compared to the strike band that we've put onto the stone. But if you can put two stones together and you can see them touching, pretty much most of that strike band from top to bottom, they'll probably do it.
Great. We have Neil is asking, why a deeper cup? How does the stone play differently with a deeper cup?
So this is where I like to refer to my ice tech friends, because sometimes these type of questions get a little bit more into that world. So the depth of the cup does play into how the stone performs in terms of the amount of curl and speed. There's no correlating numbers saying this depth of cup gives you this and this depth of cup gives you that, but it is right now all of our new stones have a little bit deeper cup than what our reconditioned stones would be, and that's based off of our CNC program. We've kind of tweaked it a little bit every year when we get kind of some feedback, but a deeper cup does play into how the stones perform. And the other thing is that a deeper cup gives you a sharper trailing and leading away edge. I'm not sure if they can see me, but on the top of the running surface, there's a flat spot, and then that's the part that touches the ice. And then those edges that come down off of that, the sharper those edges are, the more defined your running surface is, and it allows you also to be able to texture and enhance the stone. So having a pretty pronounced running surface by having a deeper cup will play into that. So that answers that. It's a bit of a, that's a tough question because there's no correlating numbers.
Well, speaking of numbers, as a follow-up to that question, Mikhail from St. Louis is asking, what is a normal measurement of the cup?
So diameter is on new stones. I can give you what our new stones go out at. So our new stones go at 124 millimeters, and that's the diameter of the inside of the cup. And the running surface width on our new stones go out at 6 millimeters. So, and Dan, actually, if you want to slide to the next slide, this will kind of play into some of those questions a little bit, in that you can see, again, this is a comparison between a couple of the companies that are out there, but you can see the distinct difference between that shallower, flatter profile to the profile that we put on, and you can, that pretty much shows you how much of an effect that moving forward will have on your stones, because that flatter profile, once you start texturing or as the stones start working, they're aging and moving down the ice, that gets a little bit wider. And at what point in time now do you actually have no running surface to work on? So flatter stones give you quick stones, but those are also the type of stones that are harder to keep growing. So that's another reason why the profile, how the profile plays into how the stones perform. Any more questions, Dan?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we can move past that one then. Now, the other option into repairing your running surfaces is also called inserting, and it's a familiar stone that we see in a lot of clubs. And basically what it is taking the blue home granite material and inserting into the running surface area of the stone. One of the things I'd like to draw the attention to is there's a lot of rumor or misconception out there that the insert is actually very deep into the stone. And as you can see, the insert is only 3/4 of an inch into the stone. The reason for that, obviously, is we don't want to insert too deep into the stone where it will disrupt the way the weight transfers from the stone from the hit, or else the stones will crack. So back when inserting started, and it's not a new process, you can see in the slide here, I thought that it started in the 1960s. They did insert stones quite deeply. So some of the pictures you might see on the internet are pretty deep inserted stones, which does cause the stones from cracking. We've been doing inserting for 30 years now that I think I've been around, and this is the depth we've always used. So I think some of those stones were original inserting, but that's how deep they are. They don't go all the way down into the stone. The blue hone insert is also epoxied into the stone, so it's in there for the life of the stone. Some people think you can interchange the inserts. We haven't come up with something yet where you can pop inserts out and pop a new one in. But basically, once that insert's in there, that stone can be reconditioned, as we saw earlier, and have the running surface, renewed and live on. So there really isn't at this point in time a reason to switch out inserts. I think I can count on one hand the number of times I've actually had to replace an insert, and most of the times something's happened to the stone around the bolt hole. There's been some damage done to the clay, or sometimes they run into we get a little bit of a hit on the insert from the felspar that's in there, and we can't get down deep enough with the machines to grind it out, so we'll crack the insert out and put a new one in. So it has happened, but it's not something that's commonly done. Inserting came about as a way to combat poor ice. Back in the days of corn brooms, smoking on the ice, all the kind of things, bad water, all that stuff that was happening when curling was starting to get a little bit more prominent. One of the things they struggled with was just really slow poor ice. So one of the things that was developed was an insert. And because of the fine grain in the blue home material, it is susceptible to a lot of things like poor water quality, and able to run a lot longer on some of those ice conditions. So that was one of the reasons that inserting came about. So it's one of those things that you can use as a club. If you're a club that has poor water conditions and don't have any of the water treatment systems in your club, then inserting is a really good way to repair those running surfaces. So you do also hear a little bit on TV about inserts straightening up, and it is true that they will polish up because they're a finer grain granite before they go up and down the ice. They do tend to polish up. So blue hone inserts may require more texturing than a Trevor stone, and that basically relates back to the type of granite and the structure of the granite. Larger grain structure would give you more aggressive stones, more texture there naturally to give you that growth. So blue home inserts do tend to be stones that are textured. But the nice thing about them is because of their durability, the texturing is something that can be done without any damage, or you can do it multiple times kind of before you start seeing any real issues with running surface shape and things like that. So blue hone inserting is a long-term repair for clubs, and it's probably one of the most predominant repairs that we do for sure for clubs that have stones that don't have inserts in them currently. So that's kind of the quick blurb on inserting. So do you know if anybody had any questions on the insert process or anything like that? It's pretty standard, pretty straightforward. It's been around for a little while. Okay, so next slide. So these are ceramic inserts, or ceramic calcerts, sorry. This is another thing that's out there. It's not a process that we do, but it is a process that's out there that can be done. It's not something that we would recommend for a dedicated curling club facility, and the reason for that being is because of the nature of the material. The stones tend to straighten up really quickly, and it's hard to keep that texture on them to curl. So that's one of the things we find a lot of clubs have them for, and they're very quick, but they have a hard time keeping them curling. They're great in a dedicated ice facility because of the fact the ceramic material, it will cool a little bit quicker than the granite, so you do have that option of getting them on the ice a little bit quicker. So they're not something that is out of the question for a marine facility if they're looking for that type of situation. If you're a dedicated curling club, though, and you have these stones and you'd like to improve the performance of them, in the bottom right picture is a picture of what we've done to some clubs that have these stones. Basically, we just take the blue insert and install it right into the ceramic, and that gives them a granite surface to move forward. So those are some of the things that can be done. But if you're in a marina facility, ceramic tiles, are working great. We do get a lot of calls from marine clubs looking for those specifically because of that. Any questions on ceramics? Okay, perfect. So Dan, if you want to go forward, perfect. So the last option, obviously, to replace or to fix your stones or to improve the performance of your stones is buying new stones. So our company manufactures our new stones at Trevor Granite. We have the blue Trevor Granite, which is shown in the above picture, and the red Trevor Granite, which is in the below picture. There's two companies in the world that do manufacture new stones. So we're the only company using the Trevor Granite. The other company uses the Elsa Craig common green granite. So basically, again, all I'd like to say to clubs is when they're looking at buying new stones is do your homework, do your research, get some references, things like that. Go out and see what's out there and make an educated decision. Curling clubs tend to be very poor in making educated decisions in terms of things because a lot of times the dollar, and I'm the president of my club, so I totally get it, but the dollar is usually kind of what plays into some of those decisions. So nice to have the clubs, I always just say go out, do your homework and do your research and make sure you have all the information based on what's out there for you to make your decisions. So any questions on any of those kind of things? That's kind of a quick overview on how to repair stones and what repair processes are out there and what's available. That's so good.
Seeing none.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to move into this section here. Oh, I forgot about this. I knew I told you, Dan. So the quick cool stones, I just wanted to touch on those really quickly. And basically, the quick cool stones are a set of stones that we developed with Pete Mitchell and Russ Umke, and it was an idea that came about for arena curling clubs that don't have the ability to keep their stones cold and are having storage issues. And basically, what happens is, as you know, you get to the club, you get your stones up there, and then it takes 3 or 4 ends before the stones start to become playable because it's taken them that long to cool down. So one of the things that we designed in that situation was what we call the quick cool stones. And basically, it's a composite type material similar to the light rock material. And basically what happens is the material that's used in the running surface will keep the cool from the stones, or the warm from the stones, sorry, to transfer into the cool ice. And it'll actually allow you to play with the stones. You can take them from like your room temperature and put them on the ice and you can play with them right away. So there's still in project thing. We've got 2 arena curling clubs that are actually using full sets of them. And so we were hoping to get some feedback this year so we can make some more tweaks and things to get them to where we want them to be. But unfortunately, those clubs, thanks to COVID, have had shortened seasons. So all the feedback we've gotten so far has been very positive on them. And the great thing about these is basically they're designed to get people curling. And, arena clubs are usually working on a budget with less storage and all those kind of things. So we're hoping that these stones will hit that target and allow lots more arena clubs to pop up. I wasn't sure. I feel like there might be some questions.
So we did have a couple of questions come up.
Okay.
So what is the weight of a new stone?
So a brand new stone will leave here, and this is without the handle, at 42 pounds. And then you add 0.94 of a pound to give it the play weight. So handles and bolts and washers and everything just under a pound.
And Mikhail from St. Louis is asking, your stones have a round shape, Ks seem more rectangular. Any reason behind that?
Just the difference in the profiles. We work off of blueprints that were developed from the company in Wales that started making stones before they merged with Ks. So it's not a new blueprint. It's not a new profile for stones. It's just a different profile in how we do ours and how they do theirs. We actually manufacture our new stones on a CNC machine. So the granite comes into us, and then we shape it down on a CNC kind of to get the actual shape we want. But there is a bit of a difference for sure in the two shapes. And but there's no reason other than that's how we make theirs and that's how they make theirs. It's not a great answer, so Mikhail.
That's it for now.
Okay, so quick tools. Like I said, hopefully they'll revolutionize the arena curling club market out there. And as I said, we are still kind of tweaking them. We'd like them to grow a little more than what they are curling right now, but again, we're hearing lots of feedback that they're working great from the first stone. So that's basically what our objective was to be able to get rocks out there that can go down the ice straight at the first rock. So we'll keep you updated on the quick tools as we go. So texturing stones. Now this is a section that always pops up lots of conversation. And I like to preface this with just saying that there are lots of different processes and different ways that different ice techs and things will recommend or how they'll do them. So when I'm going to talk to you about texturing stones, I'm basically going to go over the way we do them and we recommend them. It's not to say that our method is better than anybody's, and it's not to say that those other methods don't work. It's just to say that this is one of the ways we do it. And after that, I encourage you to seek advice and talk to different people to give you an idea of what works and try different things. But this is the recommendations. If you call me and we talk about texturing, these are some things that I'm going to tell you. Dan, if you want to slide forward. So this is a lot of words, but I wanted to put a few things out there that are really important. So texturing is a process that is used to enhance the curl performance of your stone. We hear a lot of the word sharpening on TV. We aren't actually sharpening the stones. What we're doing is we're adding texture, we're adding roughness, we're adding traction kind of thing. That's what we're looking at and what we're doing here is to texture stones. As I mentioned before in the reconditioning section, it's not a way to repair stones. If you've got problems with your stones, texturing isn't necessarily going to be the way to fix those, depending on what's going on, but it's not a great repair tool. It's an enhancement tool, not a repair tool. I get asked all the time about timing. When should club texture stones? When should they not texture them? We don't believe in there being a schedule. In other words, if you call me and tell me, well, we texture them every September, every February, and then every April if needed, I'm going to suggest to you you're probably texturing them too much. We like to see people do them on an as-need basis. And the reason for that is we like to see the rocks mature as much as they can. And so what I do with curling clubs is they'll say, well, when is that? When do you know when they need to be done? Well, in curling club, in a dedicated curling club facility, it's a little bit trickier in an arena setup. But in a dedicated facility, basically the ice tech and the board or the ice committee, get together, kind of decide what's the minimum amount of curl that's acceptable at your club. And that's not going to be the same from one club to another. If you have a curling club that's, comprised of an older membership, then, maybe 4.5 feet of curl is too much for them. And maybe they like it a little bit less. So maybe a foot of curl is the minimum they want to do. If you get into a more club with a more competitive leagues and, that type of situation, then they probably don't want to see their club get anything less than 2 feet of curl. So at that point in time, when you get to that, that's when I would recommend, when you texture the stones. So kind of trying to let them run as long as they can. and let them mature as much as possible on their own. So kind of as an as-need basis, which means you might only texture them once this season. Next season, you might texture them 2 times. Just depends on what's going on. Anybody that's textured their stones this year, unfortunately, with no play on them, is probably going to be okay and won't require to be textured for the stuff for next season. So that's kind of how we go on schedules. As need basis changes every year. And again, this is where that rock journal will come into play. You know, you can look back over the years and see, you know, when you textured them and you know, what the weather might have been like when you did it, or did you just flood, or things like that that would play into giving you an idea of when they might need to be textured moving forward. The other thing with texturing is if you have never printed your stones or have no idea what's going on with those and stones and you're just taking a guess, don't start texturing them. First thing you need to do is take a blueprint of those stones, get an idea of what is actually going on. A lot of clubs will say, my stones are really wide, my stones are really wide, and then they'll actually blueprint them and realize that the running surfaces aren't as wide as the cloth paper. So that gives you an idea of what is actually going on. The other thing is printing will also tell you whether there's any differences in the shape of the running surface or any pitting or anything like that. If you've got stones that have lots of pitting, texturing again is not going to be something you're going to want to do. So printing your stones will give you a really good idea of what's going on with those stones. If you have, one thing to remember is that stones don't change overnight. Okay, you can't go into a club and the rocks be curling 4 feet and then go to the club the next day and they be dead straight. That's not a rock thing. If that's what's happening, or you're finding drastic changes like that, there's probably something else going on. So do some investigation. The rock should be, in my opinion, that we all end up opinions, but in my opinion, you know, we want you to check your ice, check your water, check all those things that are easy to change. And then if everything looks great, everything's level, then you look at the stones, and if the stones need to be textured, then, you know, go ahead. But if something's going on that's not normal, make sure you're checking all those different things and then making a decision on what you want to do with it. Another thing is make sure you have the right tools, make sure you're buying the right paper, make sure you have some sort of setup as we have a texture kit. If there's different jigs out there and different things that people have set up, but make sure you have the proper tools to do the job. The other thing I always like to see is, you know, seek advice from the experts. Curl USA has got some great ice techs that you can contact. Curling Canada, same thing, the provincial ice teams, they all have ice techs that you can contact. Let them know what's going on, give them all the details, and you know, they'll give you some advice on where to go and how to do and what process to work with. Don't believe everything you read if you're on the internet or if you're on TV. And then know your building. Again, it goes back to know your stones, know your water, know what works for your club. I love sharing information between club to club, but keep in mind that what works at the neighbor's club might not work at your club because their setup may be different than your setup. So that's kind of my not rules of texturing, but my things that I like to get out there right away. And I know there's probably going to be some questions. So if
you have quite a few questions.
Yeah. texturing is usually the big question thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is, before we get to those questions, I don't know, Dan, if you can just kind of hold on those and see what's in there. But the first thing I want to do is talk about printing stones, because that might answer some of those. And then once we get done, we'll jump. I've got some things to show you about texturing, and then we can kind of go into questions as we go through that. Does that sound okay?
So are you not going to use the presentation for a second then, Kim?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it off then, and we can.
Oh, actually, do you want to go to the first? Oh, before you, do you want to go to the printing tool slide first, and then go into that?
Sure, I can do that. No problem at all.
Okay, so if you haven't printed your stones before, these are the tools that you're going to need. Okay. So granite or stainless steel rolling pin, easy to get on Amazon. Both of those pictures are off Amazon, so there's plenty of them out there. We would prefer you to get a stainless steel rolling pin because it has a little bit smoother surface than, say, a granite one, and the smooth surface is very important to make sure you're getting an accurate read. You'll need either jet ice buckets or a dog dish, something with a 9-inch diameter opening, so you can just flip the rock over top and put it right in there. The next thing you're going to need is the proper paper. So carbonless copy paper. I don't know if it shows on there, but that's a picture I took off of the Staples Canada website, and I can give you the order number for that paper. But basically, it's a 2-part computer dot matrix paper, and so you can get it in cases, but I believe it's 1,400 sheets, which is a lot for a curling club, but you might want to share with some neighbor clubs and go in and buy a case, but it's still at this point in time readily available. And then the last thing you're going to need is a digital caliper, and that will be the tool that you're going to use to measure the running surfaces. So quick touch on, again, like I said, steel rolling pin is, or a steel bar. We have a steel bar here, which is what you'll see me use. Make sure the stones are dry when you're printing them. So either cold or warm, but not in between. The printing will show you any pitting and show you any differences in the shapes of your running surface. It'll also give you an accurate view on what the running surface width is at. And keeping in mind, you don't need to print the entire set of your stones unless you want to. But printing a few stones from different sheets will give you a pretty good idea of what's going on with your stones, and making sure you're marking those stone serial numbers down, not the handles, but the serial numbers. And if you don't have serial numbers on your stones, you can get a Dremel diamond tip tool and just serial number them 1 to 64 or whatever your sheets are, so that you can always make sure that if you printed stone number 10, that when you go to see how things are aging, you're going to print stone number 10 again. So just making sure that you're using the same stone. And the other thing is making sure that you clean the running surface before you print them. Running surfaces can be cleaned with naphtha gas or Coleman's camp fuel is what we use here. The reason for that is it does evaporate quickly, so it can be done in warm or cool settings. Just make sure you're wearing gloves, because it does tend to get on your skin a little bit, dries your skin out. So we always use them here, but that's what we use to clean the running surfaces and not disinfect. There's a difference. These are just cleaning. We're just talking about cleaning. So make sure those running surfaces are clean before you go ahead and print your stones. So Dan, if you want to go live. So I've already did like the cooking shows, and I've set up my rocks here because I didn't want everybody watching me do this. So basically I've got my rock in here, and we use a dog dish because it's easy to transport everywhere. Basically, got it in here. You're going to take your carbonless printer paper, and I don't do this as much as I used to, so I use the cheater masking tape on either side, and just basically you're going to tape it down so that the surface is nice and flat. And then you're going to take your stainless steel bar. We use this here because of the fact that we do have a machine shop, so we are able to clean this up every once in a while, make sure it's nice and smooth. And you're just going to basically roll it across. So if you're using your rolling pin, you're going to do the same thing, being very careful not to roll over the edge of the running surface, but just make sure that you're getting that footprint. If you do roll over the edge, and you'll get better at this as you do it, not such a big deal. Just remember that that's where you roll off, but this will give you a good idea of what that footprint of that stone looks like. Now this is a stone, it's a new stone. It's on my desk for people to look at, so it's been pushed around and put on the floor and all kinds of things. So once you've gone around, you've gotten a good solid, and you can see the lines through the paper. So you'll get a good idea if you use this paper. Anything thicker you can use. We used to have sheets that we had made up specifically that had the serial number and all sorts of things in it, but they were too thick, and so you weren't getting an accurate sample. You can see that that's the top page. So if I take this apart, this will give me the actual footprint of that stone. So for being a stone that sits on my desk and gets pushed around a lot, it's actually not in bad shape. Okay. So any questions? Were there any questions on the printing process? Probably not. Probably all next year.
Kind of related about printing.
Okay.
Oh, actually, Skynet is aware here. Randy's computer is asking, after printing stones, what would dictate you to texture? Are you able to match stones after printing?
So your printing of your running surface will give you a couple of things, and you can match them off of prints. Basically, you can measure the widths of the running surfaces, which will give you running surface profiles that are the kind of like, and you can put those kind of into sets. So basically, I'm not sure if Dan, on my next slide, I think, is my next slide these pictures?
Yes, it is. Yep. Do you want
Okay,
me to
perfect.
show
Do
that?
you want to pop that up for a sec?
Sure.
Sorry.
No problem.
So these are some examples of prints that I have taken off of stones over the years and kind of kept them because they're a pretty good idea of what is going on. So on the left is a print that I took of a new stone that Wayne just finished and put in the box, and it's going into stock. So it's a new stone here. So on your print sheet, you won't necessarily need the club name because you know it's your club, but you could put the club name in there. What's important is the date, the serial number of that stone. So again, I didn't put it in there, but it would have a serial number because it's a new stone insert. If it's a club that just had reconditioning done, it would be serial numbered 1 to 64. Or if you have no serial numbers in them, then you can go ahead and put your own serial numbers in them, and you're going to record that in there. Then you're going to put the handle color and sheet and player number of that stone. Okay, you're going to put that in there. There's a good chance that stone should be moved at some point in time. So you want to make sure that you keep track of where it goes. And then the measurements basically are, you measure the diameter of the cup, and then you're going to measure the width of the running surface. So again, 124 millimeters straight across, and then the width of that running surface is 6 millimeters. Then there's a spot for any notes. And I always like to write strike band notes. If it's a club stones that I've gone out to look at, then I'll take a look at the strike bands and keep notes there. So it's one of the ways you can keep notes on that stone and that specific snapshot. It's kind of like a doctor's office and the files that they keep on their patients. We kind of keep the same type of files here at Canada Burlington. So the top picture is this one here, and it's a very wide running surface. One of the things that you can take a look at that is there's a very fuzzy line around the outside and the inside of those running surface. So this is a stone that's kind of worn past the running surface. This stone probably could use some reconditioning. You can take a look at that because of the fact that it's kind of fuzzy, but at the same token, this stone might be working really well in the club that it's in. So a lot of how your stones are performing will also go into what you're, it's part of the equation. It's part of the answer. It's part of what you're going to do forward. If the stones are working fine, carry on. Don't, just because you've got wider running surfaces doesn't mean you need to send them in and get them worked on. If they're working and you're happy with how they're performing, then keep going. One of the other stones that we had come in, they wanted to know why their stones were so slow, and the stones came in and they had the narrowest running surface with all kinds of pits in it. So you've got a 38 and a half pound stone running on this really, really narrow running surface. At this point in time, this print tells me that this club needs to come in and have the running surfaces redone, because if you thought that you could take this stone and widen out the running surface by texturing it, your arms are going to fall off before you get that running surface to a width that's actually going to perform. So your best bet is to have that stone come in here. The other thing is by the time you get done, texturing that rock, trying to widen out that running surface, you've now created probably some inconsistencies. And while you might get the running surface kind of out to where you need to be, there's a good chance the shape won't be the same from stone to stone. So you're not creating a good performance. So your parent can give you a really good idea of what you can do with it, and where the running surfaces are. If your running surfaces are starting to get wide, then when you start to texture the next time around, you're going to do a little bit different process to try to keep them from widening out. So that's one of the ways printing your stones will really give you a good idea moving forward. Matching stones by prints can be done, but honestly, if you've got someone in the club that throws a nice stone, then they don't have to be a Brad Gushu or a John Schuster or any of those guys. If you've got someone in the club that throws a really nice rock and is consistent, throws the same kind of rotations, have them go out and match some stones. That'll give you a good idea of what they're doing. I still think personally throwing stones is the best way to match them, but you can match them off prints. It's just a little bit tougher. So I'm sure there's probably some more.
Okay, you ready for some questions?
Sure.
I'll just start at the top and work my way down.
Okay.
So Jim from Schenectady is saying, along the lines of things that texturing cannot fix, do you have any comments about pebbling and ice prep as they affect speed, curl, action in the house, i.e. scratching rocks won't help crappy pebbling on club ice?
So my only comment in that frame of mind is that texturing is not the way to cure lazy ice making. So, you know, if you're not going to do the proper maintenance on your club, at your club, or you've got runs in the ice, or things that are going on that way, texturing is not the way to fix that. You know, get your ice level, get your ice set up, and then go about it. But yeah, you can, all of things in a curling club play into how these rocks perform. I like to tell everybody to go ahead and, you know, like I said, the ice is the easiest thing to kind of, you know, make changes. And as you're making changes, you know, change little things and then see what it does. Don't change this, and this, and then now you don't know what worked. So, you know, in that sort of situation, you have to go texture, throw down your pebbles, see what it's doing. You know, there's a lot of experimenting will go into it. But yeah, texturing is not, you know, not a way to make up for some of those other things.
Okay, Dan from Broomstones asks, is there a recommended break-in period before texturing your stones after having the running surface reprofiled?
So after you get your running surface reconditioned, I would suggest that there shouldn't be a break-in process in terms of let them run this long and then texturing them. It goes back to more so the let them play until you get down to that, you know, minimum amount of curl, and then go ahead and texture them. If we've done your stones, Dan, and something's not working correctly or things aren't going the way you want to, then give me a call, and of course, you know, we'll go through it and see if there's something that we can tweak. It could be something as simple as changing temperature, changing pebble bed sizes, things like that might get them working. But texturing, you know, if you flood and the ice and the rocks are running a little straighter, I don't like to see, you know, clubs texture after that because the ice is green, right? It's brand new ice, so you know it's nice to kind of let them play a bit before we get into it. But you shouldn't need to texture stones right after they've had the running surfaces done. So if that's a situation, then you know there's something more to investigate.
Okay, Kevin from Plainfield is asking, how do you take strike zone measurements?
Strike band, they mean? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, my guess is he means strike band.
Well, basically, again, if you can take your two stones and put them side by side and see how much of the strike bands are touching, that will give you an idea. On a new set of stones, if you put them side by side and up against each other, you'll see the very distinct shape of them. We do them here so that we've got a digital readout on our lathes and things like that, so we know how much we're working back and where we're centered the stone to. But it's hard. You can put a straight edge on them, and that might give you a better idea, you know, kind of what they're measuring out. But it's a little bit more difficult with straight bands. I'd say straight edge is usually what I see the most common pictures of.
Okay, Jim from Schenectady writes, when printing stones, in addition to recording serial number, info, date, etc., don't forget to record which side the print is for.
That's a good one. Thank you, Jim. Yes, exactly. So we have lots of clubs, you know, if you have a new set of stones, there's a running surface on both sides. So you want to make sure that you're recording what side you're printing, absolutely. If you have stones that do not have inserts in them, there should be, and it may have been overtaken by the running or the strike band if you have older stones, but there should be a scribe line on that stone that tells you which side is the top and which side is the bottom. So on your print, you would write underneath of that scribe line side or non-scribe line side. If you don't have inserts, you can write handle or insert side, but if you don't have inserts, if you write handle side, there is a chance that that stone might get flipped over time without you knowing, so you want to make sure you identify it by that scribe line. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, looks like the last one. Neil is asking, do you sell a jig to spin stones and narrow running surface?
I do actually. So if we want to slide, let me see. The next slide, Dan, I think goes right into the texturing, doesn't it? Oh, no, it is. Okay, so if you want to go live, then we'll go back to live. Okay, let me move this other way. Okay, so texturing, this is the jig that we sell, and you don't have to buy a jig from us. There's lots of homemade jigs out there that do what they need to do. The biggest thing is you want to have stops. Okay, this allows you to texture the stone and make sure that when you're pushing the stone forward and backward that you're giving the same stroke from stone to stone, which is important. In texturing, one of the things to remember is always do the same thing from one stone to the next. So that means I'm going to start texturing. I'm going to do all the sheets. I'm not going to texture a sheet and then get Russell to do a sheet and then get Dan to do a sheet, because now you've got different people doing them. So if I start texturing, then I'm going to do them all, and I'm going to do them the same way. So on our jig, we've got a metal frame that holds the texture paper down. We also have a hard granite plate that the stones will sit on. So if you're doing your own jig, you want to make a nice hard surface. Wood is okay, except for it will wear in. So you want to make sure that you've got something solid. You can probably pick up a granite piece at a local granite countertop place that's got some reminiscences and old stuff, so you can pick that up. Something to hold the paper down. As I mentioned, we do the metal frame to keep it down. The paper, while I'm doing this real quick, is a silk carbide, okay, wet dry paper. The reason we use silica carbide is because that's the type of paper that works well with the granite. It will give you a nice bite, gives you that what you're looking for. The reason for the wet dry back is so that the paper is rigid, so that when you push the stone across the paper, it doesn't wrinkle or rip. So that's why you want to make sure you're using a wet dry back. We have 80, 100, and 120 grits, and depending on the type of stone, if you have glue hone insert stones, we're usually going to recommend using 80 grit, which is more aggressive paper, or 100 grit, depending on how aggressive you want to do them. If you don't have glue hone insert stones and you've got either straight Trevors, you're going to use probably 100 grit would be your most aggressive, and 120 would be kind of a lesser aggressive approach. And then if you've got Elsie Craig's, same kind of thing. I'd be cautious about the amount of grit. So again, I would stick around 100, probably max to 120 grit for those. So basically, to give you just an idea, one, make sure that your paper's secure. And you just put the frame down here. Down it goes. And then you start on your papering process. If you are in a situation where you have wide running surfaces and you want to narrow them in or keep them at where they're at, the jig comes with a felt piece of paper, a felt pad, sorry. And basically what'll happen is that goes on top of the granite surface plate, and then you put your paper on top of that. And when you put the stone down on this paper, now, if the stone will nestle into the felt pad, and you'll be working the edges of the stone more so than working the flats of the stone. Okay, so that's the different parts of the jig. Won't always use that felt pad. So I get a lot of clubs that call me and say, we bought a texture kit 4 years ago, come with this felt pad thing, what do we do with it? So it's there as a tool. It's one of the tools in your bag that you can use moving forward, depending on whether you need it or not. So if you don't use it right away, that's fine. But again, as you texture over the years and print your stones, once you start seeing that your running surfaces are getting a little bit wide and you want to keep them narrowed in, then you can put the felt pad in and go through your texturing process, and that will help stop those stones from walling out. We could spend hours talking about texturing because it's always a hot topic, and I know Russell had mentioned that there is a chance that we're going to be doing a texturing, maybe a texturing thing later in the year. So I'll do my best to answer all your questions, but yes, texturing is a big topic. After you've textured your rock, let's say, this is what you're going to get, okay? Now the dust has been pushed off this paper, so it didn't get all over my desk. But basically, the remnants that you see on the paper are the paper breaking down. It's not the granite rock breaking down. So when you hear people talk about, if I texture my stones too much, am I taking granite off the rock? The answer to that is no, in the sense that if I give you a piece of granite and a piece of this sandpaper and say, come back when you've actually made a big difference, I'm not going to see it for a while because it takes a long time. So basically, you aren't affecting the actual granite in terms of you removing granite, but what you are doing is creating scratches in the stone. And so the more times you do that, the more chance you have of creating inconsistencies. So when people talk about, is it bad to texture my stones, from an actual life expectancy, no, but from a running surface expectancy, it can be moving forward. So that's the difference. Everybody always asks me that. Can I hurt my stones texturing? Well, physically, no, but you can cause performance issues if you're not paying attention regularly. Okay, I know there's got to be questions, so maybe we can run through some of the questions on texturing.
So Kim, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So on the texturing.
Yeah.
So I noticed that Kevin Masden, he's got a little wooden box that he uses occasionally. Yeah. And when I've been on some Grand Slam ice cruise, Mark has one also. And I know that the club that I curl in Quebec actually had somebody texture their stones last season, and he used the box. So can you explain the difference between the box and doing it on the granite?
So they've just developed their own kind of jig. So there isn't really a difference in the sense of the process or their version versus this version. It's their homemade setups. Some of the guys I know have seen boxes that actually have wooden sides with rollers on them so that they can spin the stone how they want to do it. I believe CBC, if you can get into some CBC, there was an article done a couple of years ago with Greg Uasco in Fredericton, and he was working on the stones before the mixed doubles event, and he's got a little bit different setup than what's here too. The biggest thing is to just make sure you've got something that you can do the stone on consistently. Jigs are better than just on a tabletop because I feel like, you know, it gives you an opportunity to work within something, but those guys have all just developed different things that work for them. I've seen washers under car wash mitts. I've seen all kinds of different things. So there's different things out there for sure.
And so just a couple other quick questions that I want to ask before we get done, and if there's more to talk about in terms of texturing, that would be fine. One, I'm wondering about when we're printing stones, should we make a note about the direction of the handle?
No. So in terms of printing, that's not as important because you're taking a full blueprint of the running surface. When you're texturing, it can be depending on the process that you're doing. So our recommendation for a standard texturing is it's an up and back push-pull is what we call it. But we have the handle set up at 12, push-pull, then we go to 2, push-pull, and then we go back to 10, push-pull. And the reason for that, in the way we do it, is so that it allows the circle to be broke up into even pieces, meaning you're getting even scratching all the way around the running surface. Some guys will just do a pull one way and a push and then turn it and do pull push kind of thing. So again, there's different processes out there, but in terms of printing, it doesn't matter which way the handle is. When you get to your texturing, if you've got a specific process you're doing, then it will be important where the handle goes, but that's only to orient you on what you're doing.
So I'll ask I've got 2 more questions to ask, and then there's a list here that Matt can kind of go through.
Sure.
What about in terms of stones? We've been asking some of our clubs about whether they rotate their handles year after year. Should people consider rotating their handles, or is that really no longer needed?
So I touched a little bit on that on the next kind of coming into maintenance, but basically it's not like it used to be where they wanted you to turn the handle a quarter turn every year. And the reason for that was back is before the no lift, when you had a lift delivery, backswing delivery, what would happen is in your backswing, the rock would come into contact with the ice, and they felt that it would get a wear spot in the running surface from coming into the ice like this all the time. And so the reason to rotate the handle was so that you were wearing that spot all the way around and not just in one spot. With the no lift delivery, that's not as much of an as an issue. So I don't recommend, it's not something we say make sure that you do. If you do it, that's fine. I would much more like to see you rotate the outside sheets into the middle and do that as opposed to worrying about turning the handle a quarter turn. That makes sense.
Yeah, and thanks. That takes care of my next question. So,
No worries.
okay. And the last thing I just would want to know about is storing stones at the end of the season. Should we clean them before we store them?
Yes. So I always would like to see you clean them when they come off the ice and you put them into storage. And I would always like to see you clean them before they go back onto the ice. If you are washing the club down and you're rinsing out the paint and everything's going out the door, there's no reason you can't lay those stones out on the cement and wash them down, you know, with your power washer or whatever. Just obviously you don't want to get right into the running surface, but if you're just washing them down, you can do that, let them dry, or you can wipe them down with the Coleman's Camp Fuel or things like that. But yeah, I would like to see them cleaned. And then when you come back in, before they go down on the ice, they should be cleaned again for sure.
Okay, that takes care of me. Matt, you want to go to the list?
Matt, you're muted.
That usually helps to unmute myself. Sorry about that. So
Okay.
Neil says, what about spinning?
What about spinning? Okay, so spinning. So spinning or turning the rocks on the texture paper is a way to either widen them or narrow them. If you are attempting to widen out your running surfaces, you're gonna probably want to use a push-pull method on a hard surface. If you're wanting to narrow the running surfaces, you're gonna use that soft surface underneath, and then you're gonna turn them. There is no correlation between 5 turns doesn't give you so much more millimeters of running surface. I wish, because everybody's in numbers these days. Everybody wants a number for everything. That's not the way that works. There's an average. Kind of what you do is put it down, you turn it, and you print it and see where you got. And if you're at where you want to be, then if you turned it 10 times, then you're going to turn the next one probably 10 times to try to match it up. But when you're widening running surfaces or narrowing them, you always need to do it and print that rock and see where you're going, and then go back and forth depending on where you're trying to get at. That, I'm hoping that's answering this question.
Okay, so Jeff from Springfield, Manitoba is asking, is there something that would make a curling stone curl too much?
Yes, but that again is in the eye of the beholder. So in terms of what is acceptable at that club. So usually what you see, if you've got a really aggressive texture on the stones, you get the stones will do kind of like they'll run down the ice and they'll kind of hold their line, hold their line, hold their line. And then as soon as they start to decelerate, usually that's just before the hog line at the other end, they'll just hook. So there's different ways to texture in terms of, you know, how much of that hook you get at the end. My personal opinion, if you've got a tight guard and I have a rock biting the top button, you better not be able to come down with control when you take it out.
Okay, John from Portage Curling Club is asking, what would be considered to be too wide and what would be considered too narrow when you measure the running band?
So if you start to see stones getting out over 7, 8 millimeters, that's fairly wide, but again, that might be working at that club. So you really need to go back to what your club is doing and how it's working at your club. If you have a rock at your club and the running surface measures 8 millimeters, and everything is exactly how you want it, then keep going. There's no reason why you need to work any different. Once you start to run into situations where things aren't how you want them to be, then you can start working on whether you need to narrow that running surface back. Every club's a little bit different. So again, a wider running surface, and this is where all the discussion prompts into texturing, might be too wide at some clubs. If you can't keep them, like if you find that you're texturing them multiple times, if they're probably too wide. If they're really slow, they're probably too narrow, which means there's not enough surface there for the weight of the stone to carry down the ice. You know, different things like that. But again, it's all based on what's, you know, at your club. Our new stones go out at 6 mils. And so anything under 5, I would say is probably too narrow. 5.5 is probably still, for today's conditions, on the narrow side. But really what is working at your club is what you want to strive for, which, you know, might be different than what's at the next guy's club, kind of thing. But those are type of things you want to keep an eye in. But I would say if you're in around that, you know, 5.5 to 7-ish, you know, you're probably okay.
Okay, Dave Cutler is asking, can rock running surfaces get filled with debris like gripper rubber causing performance issues? And can cleaning with camp fuel and a plastic bristle brush help to restore?
So I'd be careful with the brush that you're using. Anything that you wouldn't use on your fingernails in terms of around your cuticle, I would say don't use on your rock. So you want to make sure it's still something that's quite fine. But the scratches that are in a running surface are very, very fine, so they do fill up quite quickly. Cleaning the stones, I would recommend cleaning them weekly with the Coleman's Can Fuel. And usually if you've got any rentals, so if you've had a group come in that are new curlers and you've got rentals, or even after your learn to curl leagues, you might want to go ahead and give the stones a clean. A lot of times we'll hear guys tell us that they get a half a foot of curl right back just from cleaning those scratches out. So definitely, I think cleaning the running surface should become more part of the, you know, weekly maintenance of the clubs, more so than what it has been.
Speaking of Coleman Camp Fuel typically has a rust inhibitor mixed into the white gas. Does this cause issues if you use it to clean stones?
So that's what we use here, and we've always used. I do know when we use it to clean the handles, because that's what we use when we're engraving the handles. We put the paint in, and then we use the Coleman's Camp Fuel to clean it off. It does have a bit of a greasy feel to it sometimes. So, but you want to use on a ray, like a regular soft ray, and then you just wipe it down, and we found that it'll evaporate. If you want to get into COVID talk, just a little, not a lot. Coleman's Camp Fuel is not for cleaning or disinfecting, it's just a cleaning thing. The Coleman's Camp Fuel won't attack the material on the handles, so if you get any of those black scratches or anything from people's brooms, that will get cleaned off without it affecting the material. We've been suggesting and recommending that to use just an alcohol-based cleaner for the handles for COVID, only because we know that won't attack the material. So we actually have a local distillery here, so we get this from them, and it's a 80% ethanol, 1.45% glycerol, and then 0.125% hydrogen peroxide, and this is what we've been using at Canada Coleman Stone for cleaning anything handle related and everything. But Coleman's Camp Fuel, we haven't had any issues with it for cleaning the running surfaces or anything like that.
So keeping in this similar theme, Camp Fuel versus denatured alcohol for cleaning. You said, right?
That might be going over my head in terms of scientific, what I know about stuff. So I'm not sure.
All right, changing topics for a second. Tom from Long Island Curling is asking, is there a specific maintenance for stones with ceramic inserts?
So I would suggest cleaning them again is something that you want to keep doing. The other thing with them too is you probably will find you'll be texturing them more often just to keep them curling. But as far as a difference, I'm not aware of. It's not a process that we do, so I don't know a ton about it in terms of long-term effects, but a lot of that is the combination of the profile that's on those rocks and materials. So you may find that you might need to texture those a little bit more to keep them curling, but I would keep them clean as well.
That's it for right now.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I think that covers everything texture-wise. Again, make sure you're using the right paper. Make sure you're doing the same process from stone to stone. Make sure that you're doing it on an as-need basis. And if you don't know or you're not sure, please seek advice from myself or any of your ice tech guys in your associations. There's some great ones out there, and they've seen a lot more than I've seen in terms of ice and stone relations. So, you know, they're great people to resource, and they'll be happy to help you with any of the texturing comments or information along those lines. So that's all I have to say about texturing, unless there's more questions pop up. All five. Okay, so Dan, do you want to split? I think this is kind of the tail end, but do you want to flip to maybe my next slide? Okay, so we did talk about some of these things, and these are some of the maintenance tips and storage tips that I've got for you today. And again, I'm happy to answer questions and things like that that will pop up specific to your needs, so please don't be afraid to ask. So basically, just a few things, and if you think I've missed something that you think is a good idea, by all means, you know, shout it out or type it up, and the guys will share it with us. So basically, start of the season, as we mentioned, make sure you clean your stones and your handles. You're going to be, this is when you're going to inspect your stones, go, you know, through the spray cans, see if there's anything in there that you didn't maybe notice before. You're going to store them out in the shed. Some clubs don't have the opportunity to store them in their locker rooms in the off season or whatever, so they have to store them in the ice shed. If they're out there when you are going to start painting your white, please make sure that you're covering them. I think everybody, you know, these are probably pretty basic. Everybody's probably doing this stuff already, but please make sure to cover them. One of the things that we always find could be cause some troubles down the road is just making sure that you're cooling them down properly. And then basically that means, you know, getting them out when the shed's cooling, getting them onto the backboards. And then once they're ready to go from the backboards to the ice, we want to use, and maybe Dan, sorry, if you want to flip back live again. One of the tools that is really important that I think all clubs should have is this plastic snow fence. And basically, it's hard to see us. Basically, it looks like this. It's not plastic snow fence. I always call it snow fence, and Fred always gives me trouble because snow fence isn't this thick. But it's basically plastic fencing. And what it does is it allows the stones to sit as close to the ice as possible, but still up off the ice so that the airflow will get around them. So as they cool down, they'll start to sweat, and then what will happen is all that water will kind of run down underneath and under the snow fence and not create that bond between the rock and the ice. So it's very important to remember that even the smallest bond will cause and can cause debris, or not debris, granite to come out of the running surface. So it's really important to make sure that you're pulling them down properly. You can get this at like your Home Depot, Lowe's, hardware stores, stuff like that. If any boxes that we do for any event stones, this is the material we put in the bottom. So when it comes to storing your stones, if you put them in any racking and you want to put them running surface down, you're going to want to put them on top of this. If you can, I'd like to see you store them on your sides, but if you don't, you want to use this, that's great. No carpet, things like that. So Daniel, do you want to go back to my next slide there? So using the plastic fence to cool the rocks down before they go right onto the ice. And then the other thing is, while they're cooling down, make sure you're cleaning the ice off the stones. If you are playing early in the summertime and you have a high humidity rate in the club, you see the stones will always have ice rolling down the sides and dripping and freezing down. Please make sure you're always cleaning that off. One of the clubs that I curled at that has summer league would keep a towel out on the back behind the hack for the players to just wipe that ice down, just so that when they come into contact with each other, they're not hitting all that and it's not causing issues. So just keep that cleaned off of the stones. Kind of that's the start of the season, you know, free ice installation type thing. So during the season, you know, I can't tell you how many curling clubs I've gone into, and I have to pull the rocks up out of a hole in the rock boxes. This area should not be ignored. This is the area that should be scraped just as much as the rest of the ice. And please make sure you're always putting fresh pebble down. We want the rocks to always be sitting on fresh pebble. We don't want them to sit in debris or frost or allowed to bond to that ice surface. So please make sure that that's an area that you're keeping scraped, keeping new fresh pebble putting down. As we talked about, cleaning the rocks running surfaces weekly using either that naphtha gas or Pullman's camp fuel. Again, if you've got rentals coming in or learn to go leagues, you might want to give them a quick clean the next morning, just so that you know you've got anything. Everything that goes on your broom, everything that goes on your gripper, everything that you get on your curling pants, that goes on the rock too. The rock goes up and down the ice a lot more times than you do, so there's a lot. It's easy for those scratches to fill up. Again, we talked about the handles. Not as much of an issue to turn the handles a quarter turn as it used to be, but it's really important to rotate your sheets through the club. And that's not just moving the handles, that's physically moving the rocks from the outside sheets to the middle of the sheets. And the reason for that is you want the rocks to get as much equal play throughout the club as possible. Think about when you've got people practicing. Most people will go and practice on the middle sheets if the ices are all open. And think about your bonspiels and your league plays and things like that. If you've got leagues with open ices, you know, encourage your conveners to schedule the sheets so that it's not the same ice that's always open. Rotate that open ice throughout their league. And make sure that, you know, when you get down to those bonspiels and stuff, you know, don't always play the final on sheet 3. You know, maybe put the final on sheet 2 sometimes, things like that. But if you rotate those outside sheets in, then they will get used as much as the inside sheets. And when you do sit down and think about it, the inside sheets do tend to get more play than the outside sheets. So rotating the handles, like I said, not as urgent. We talked a little bit about the COVID. Again, just back to the alcohol-based cleaner. During the season shutdown, okay, we're in COVID, a lot of clubs are shut down, a lot of clubs have their ice still sitting. We're all hoping we'll get back out on the ice. If you are in shutdown and it's longer than a week, please make sure to pull those rocks up off the ice and put them on your backboards. If you are in shutdown for just a week or less and you want to just keep them down on the ice, I would put them on top of that snow fence again. Again, it keeps them off the ice and lets the air flow around them. It still allows them to stay nice and cold. If you are a club that doesn't curl on the weekends, I know some of the prairie clubs in Canada here have talked to me and said that sometimes they curl up till Thursday and then they don't curl again until Monday. If you're a club like that, I would suggest again maybe to put your rocks up on that plastic fencing. And I know it's a bit of a pain in the butt to have to go and do that, but even like I said, the smallest bond and allowing those rocks to freeze into that ice can cause pitting down the road, which will cause more of an issue. And so just using that plastic snow fence allows those rocks to stay nice and cool and keep that air flowing around them. Again, during the season, texturing stones, remember, as a needed basis. Went through all of that. For arena clubs, for storage, some of the things off the top of my head, carts and racking systems are okay. Again, I would use that snow fence as the material for the stones to sit on. I don't like to see carpet used only because carpet takes a long time to dry out. So it's not one of the things, and sometimes carpet fibers can be quite harsh, and so they may, you know, put some extra scratches into that running surface that we don't want to see. So I would suggest no to carpet. Store them on their side if you can. Again, the reason, and this again is in the off season, the reason is to allow the air to flow around those stones. One of the questions we do get asked, and Russell asked me this about freezers and refrigerators and what's the right temperature and things like that. Again, I don't have an exact number for you to say this is the temperature they should be stored at, but the rock should be the same temperature as your ice surface, or as close to your ice surface as you can get to. If they're too warm, obviously they'll melt down into the ice. and it'll make them hard to throw. But if they're too cold, the opposite happens. They actually will freeze onto the ice. You want to avoid those two processes. Again, if you've got plastic fencing that you can take out and put down on the ice, and then take your rocks out and put them out as soon as you can and put them down on that plastic fencing, that will help speed up the cooling down process a little bit, and again, allow those rocks to drip down without causing a freeze to the ice situation. So some things during an arena situation I can think of. Make sure again you're always cleaning your stones before you put them back into the rackings, and you know, try to keep them stored in a safe place so they don't go missing or get any extra damage done to them. In the off season, if you can store them around in a locker room or somewhere where you can't get at them, great. If you're a club that rents the ice area in the summertime for like weddings and things like that, try to keep your stones in a situation where they can't be seen and won't be tempted. I do get calls every once in a while from a club that has had a wedding or a party or something over the summertime, and they've come back to put the ice in, and they are 48 stones and all they can find are 47 stones. So they do tend to go missing. So if you can keep them in a situation where they won't get to that. And again, once it's time to shut down, you know, check your stones, check your straight bands. If you want to do any printing, off season is a great time to do that. The stones are nice and warm. You know, just things like that is a great time to do that. Talk to me about any type of work you're going to do. Them is obviously going to be done in the off season. Different things like that. But those are some of the maintenance tips and storage type tips for you. Is there any questions? Kind of all that I have in terms of prepared material, but I'm happy to answer questions or anything along those lines about anything that I've covered or anything that I might not have covered that you'd like an answer to.
Randy's computer said, should stones be stored on their sides? I think you said yes to that a few times.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see them stored like this. It's not going to hurt their handles, but if we can store them on their edges, on their sides like that, basically that way the air will flow around them, and it will keep them any type of issues away from them. But basically, you just want to make sure that in storage that the air can get around them.
Greg Eisenhower asks, what are some of the pros and cons of naturally maturing stones versus texturing?
I'm not sure there's any cons. The only thing might be that, you know, maybe you're not getting as much curl as you like at the club if you've naturally let them progress. The more we can let them naturally progress, the better. So I would say there's really not any cons to that. In terms of texturing, again, the more you texture, the more you risk creating inconsistencies in those running surfaces. So it's just a matter of, you know, keeping in mind what you're doing, keeping track of what you're doing, kind of things like that. But as far as pros and cons, texturing used to be a big secret. Somebody was going to come in and texture your stones. Everybody got kicked out of the club, doors were locked, the blinds were pulled down, and nobody was allowed in there. And texturing has come about, and something we talk about more so because it's a tool. And we think of it as a tool for the ice technicians to provide the ice that they are looking to provide to their members. And so it should be used as a tool and not as a crutch, I guess is maybe kind of where I'm going with that.
Okay, John from Norfolk is saying, our club has 10-year-old stones with inserts on both sides. Should we, or how often should we flip?
So that's up to you in terms of club-wise, what you want to do. I wouldn't recommend flipping them every season. I would suggest you would want to do it maybe every couple seasons, or run them for as long as you want on the one side so they're not doing what you want them to do, and then flip them over. I would be making sure that all your stones are always running on the same side. You would be surprised how many times people will flip stones without them being noticed that you've done. So make sure you're keeping track of the stones, and that all scribe line sides are one way or the other. But really it's up to the club on how you want to do that. There's no need to do it every season, but up to you guys how you want to do it. There's really no right or wrong way about that.
Okay, Jeff from Springfield, Manitoba asks, does ice made from hard water wear rocks faster than purified?
Yes. So water quality can impact the stone. If you have water that's very hard, it can cause the stone to deteriorate a little bit. Treated water, on the other hand, can tend to have, in the case of glue inserts, can tend to have the stone polish up quicker. So that's why sometimes you'll see that other effect of it. But yes, water can play an impact on the stones and how they mature and how they age quicker.
That is it for right now.
Okay.
So I would say, Kim, this has been very helpful. I want to be mindful of your time and everyone else's time. I don't think if we have any more, since we don't seem to have any more questions at the moment, I would just want to thank you very much. You've done everything that I was hoping would happen in this hour and a half. And I really want to just thank you for your time. And I think we can put a link to, if you think that video that's on YouTube that your father has with Jamie Barresso is still accurate and reflects things, then we can put a link on our Curling Ice support page that links to that so people can look at that regarding some of the things that you've addressed here and also the texturing process that they do there.
Yeah, it's a really great video. It's an introduction video that they did kind of when texturing started to become a more common thing, common talked about thing. So it's a really good link to basically telling people or boards or anything about, you know, what it is and why we would do it. It gets into the processes a little bit, but it's definitely a great video for anybody that wants to divulge into the texturing world a little bit more.
That's great. And so the only last thing I would say to end this is that you're going to get an email from Pete Dellapella that'll say curling stone evaluation or curling stone talk evaluation in the subject heading, and it'd be really helpful if people fill that out and send it back to us. So thanks again for everyone participating, and thanks again, Kim, for helping us out.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the invitation, and thanks to everybody that joined in. It's one of my great joys, and what I get to do is talk about curling stones with all of you. So thanks a lot, and I wish everybody all the best, and everybody stay safe out there.
Same to you.